Hey YouTube, welcome back to the BladesIIB shop and another project video. With a week of vacation, a little bit of extra work that had to get done, some projects around the house. It's been 3 weeks since we got our first handle slab done on this knife project and got the blade programmed in here and done. So 3 weeks later, time to get back at it and work on the left handle slab. And then the next project after that will be finish profiling this blade, get it ground, and then get it heat treated. So time to continue on with making this folder. So today's project, we are going to go up and get onto Fusion 360 and try to take all of the cam programming that we did for this right hand side, and we're going to try to copy and duplicate all that over to be able to get all the programming in place for the left hand handle slab, and then we'll come down here and we will get that cut. So also in the last 3 weeks, hey, lots happening. Appreciate all of those who have subscribed to the channel. We finally crossed that magic YouTube marker of 1,000 subscribers. So I sure appreciate that. Thank you so much for subscribing. You haven't had a chance to hit that subscribe button yet, now would be a great time and you'll know exactly when that next video is coming out. But let's go ahead, jump on the computer, and let's take a look in Fusion 360 at how we're going to try to speed up the process of getting this program and get back down here in the shop for making some chips. Let's go.
All right, YouTube, as I said, it has been 3 weeks since I have worked on that right handle slab. And when you are cram learning something like Fusion, complicated program, and a CNC machine like this Tormach, seems like you take 3 weeks off and half of my brain feels like I have forgotten as much as I've learned up to this point. But I think it's going to come back pretty quick and we'll see what we can do to recreate our cam programming for the other half of this handle slab. Tried to use my time wisely. I watched some YouTube videos and I know how to mirror the part, so we do have the other body of this part created, and I went and did some reading on how you can copy and paste your cam programming. So I'm going to show that here in real time and we will see if it works out as easy as what I looked at on these YouTube videos. We'll see how that goes. So I'm going to go ahead and leave that other design. I'm going to leave both of them turned on real quick, and my thought initially is I'm going to copy my setups, move my setups over to this other piece. After I get my setups done, we'll turn off this other model so we're not looking at that, and then we're going to go through and copy and paste these machining operations underneath those setups. And after that, I'm probably going to spend some time. I'm going to make sure I go through them and really give them a good once over, but I thought I'd go ahead and record this and see how long it really takes to go through and do this process, at least at the high level, and get it done. If it gets too long and it gets too boring, then I may speed it up and dub over it to not bore you to death with it, but let's see how fast we can make this happen. So my first thought here is I want to copy this setup. I want to paste that. All right, I should end up with a setup down here. And now if I edit this setup, I should be able to go in here and select this body instead, turn that off. Okay, now I should just need to move my offset. So for Y, that should be my 38428. This should be my 0.150. Make sure that drag that around. My coordinates are in the right spot there. Yep, my coordinates are in the right place. They're on that correct spot on the model. So that should give me that setup that I need. So we've got the right machine selected, got the proper stock size. Let me go in here and just change the name of this now. And this is going to be left side inside holes and left side inside holes. So that should be one setup done. Let's take a look at our next setup here now. Now just to keep it, so we got ourselves oriented. This one takes place from this side is where we're actually machining on the part. So let's turn that around. Copy that setup. Before I mess something up here, let me actually change the name here as well. Left side inside holes. Changed it on the output processing, but let me make sure I change the names here as well. Outside holes. Now we'll edit this one. And we'll select this other body. Machine is selected. Definitely need to change where YZ is. All right, why isn't it giving me my box points that I want there? So that isn't good. All right, let's come back to that. Let's see if I can't figure out why I'm not able to select the middle of that bore. Let's get our offsets correct. I should be good there again. I should just be flipping my X or flipping my Y, negative and positive. There we go. Okay, so we've got a selected point, got our XYZ in the right place. There is setup number 2 done. This third setup is our jig. So this is our piece of material that we're just going to drill holes in to be able to bolt it down. Let's copy that as well. And probably good hygiene to keep the word setup in there so that I don't confuse these with operations. And we'll just start them all with left for left setup. Keep it simple. There we go. A little easier that time around. Just select that point, and we'll make sure we've got our dimensions. So for this time, 0.2, 0.2, we should just be flipping our X and Y again. All right, and really that's just a point that we eyeball on that jig plate, so not super critical. We'll make sure we give ourselves plenty of room. So now let's get in here and grab our last setup or all of our contours. We've got that renamed. All right, readjust our offsets on that Y, and machine is selected. We've got our point selected. We hit OK. So now that we have that part done, let me go in here and let me turn off this part of our model so that we're not confusing ourselves. Don't need to look at that anymore. We can turn that off. We can turn off those patches that are associated with it. And I'm going to leave the other patches off for a moment while we do the initial setups here, and then I'll turn those patches back on when we do the contours. All right, but now down here we have 4 different setups, and I should be able to go under this setup and hold down Shift, select all of those, copy, go down here to my left side setup, and paste. Open those up, generate tool paths, and let's see what it'll do. Just like that, I have tool paths, so I may have to go in there and see what faces it selected. Let me see. Interesting. Yeah, it's putting holes in the wrong place. So I'm going to have to click on each of those, edit them, and make sure that I am selecting the correct geometry. So I definitely have some work to do to go in there and make those correct. But that saved us a ton of time so far. And now, take a deep dive into one of these, see what it takes to edit it. All right, jump in with a quick update here. Of course, for those of you watching, you probably already figured this out. I'm trying to record, process, do this for the first time. As you can see, once I started editing, by copying the setup automatically brings in all the machining operations under it. So by me copying those and pasting them, I end up with double all the machining operations. So clearly not what I want. So I'm going to go back into each of these and I'm going to delete all of those duplicates. I did not want to have that in there. So this one starts with E22 drill 7. So let's see, I'm deleting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Leaves me with 1, 2, 3, 7. Yep, that's correct. Delete all those. And with this jig holding, yeah, I should have only had 3 in there, not 6. And for this last one, E3 adaptive. All right, so good to know. Again, I'm learning right along here with you. So when you copy a setup, it automatically copies everything underneath. Or you could create a new setup and just copy the machining operations underneath. So let me go back here and finish cleaning all these up and editing. See you back in a bit. All right, well, I've spent the last hour and a half, probably 2 hours, going through and just editing all of these, making sure that I am selecting the right faces to get onto the left-hand part instead of the right-hand part. So even though it took me a couple hours, I'm probably spending more time than I need to since I've been away from this, but really want to take my time, minimize my chance of making mistakes. Could still be some in there. Honestly, at this point, I think I'm probably riskier than when I was new. When you're brand new, you really focus and spend some time on it. Now that I almost think I know what I'm doing, probably when I'm more likely to make a mistake. So hopefully spent enough time, went through those, watched the simulation on all of these, made sure it was machining what I thought. I've sent these out for post-processing, and I have also printed out the setup sheets. So take a look at those. Again, I sent these setup sheets. I've printed these out to make sure I know exactly what tools I'm going to need. So we're ready to head down to the shop. So we've got these 4 operations that we're going to look at, and we're going to go through all 4 of these, do the inside holes, the outside holes. We'll make our jig on that aluminum plate, bolt it down, and then we'll finish the contours on this. We've tested and proven the machining processes for the successful completion of the right-hand one, so hopefully we're not breaking any cutters. We're not going through that learning curve again. Looking for smooth operation through these 4 setups. So let's head down to the shop. Haven't run the machine in 3 weeks, so I'll be checking the coolant, make sure I haven't had a bunch of water evaporate. We'll get that all set up with the refractometer, and we'll be ready to go start making some chips. Let's head down there.
We got everything we needed to programmed in Fusion. I have the 4 setup sheets printed out, ready to go. So I'm gonna go ahead and take a look, quick skim at the tools here, and we'll make sure we have everything loaded in the machine that we need to. Then we'll get our first piece of titanium in there. We'll get that probe set up, and let's start making some chips. So looking at our setup sheet here, I need tools 1, 13, 26, 27, and 35. So I have tools number 13, 26, 27, and 35 in there. I just don't have tool number 1. So what I don't need right now is 3 or 4, so I think I'm gonna kick out tool number 4. So let's go ahead and knock that out. Use the ATC to fetch it. Yes, so we'll get tool number 4 out of there, we'll get tool number 1 loaded, we'll get our part set up, and we'll start probing. All right, we got our part in there, we got it probed and set up in place. I've got the program loaded. I went ahead and checked the coolant. Like I said, this has been sitting for 3 weeks. So I added about half, maybe 3/4 of a gallon of water for some evaporation that took place over the last 3 weeks. I started out, I was at 6%, and I know I was at 5 when I left, so checked it, it was at 6%. I ran it for about 10-15 minutes. It's at just over 5 now, so I'll check it again after the coolant's run for the few hours of machining, and maybe add just a touch more water before we clean it up for the evening. So I think we should be ready to go with operation number 1. So it should go in there, should face it, put in the first few holes, machine and contour around there, and bevel that contour around there, and then we'll be ready to flip it over and punch some holes in the other side. Let's see how it runs. Alright, so overall I think that was a good cycle. It took about 7 minutes to get that all done. We've got a nice profile, we've got a bevel, our holes are in there. That hole is all the way through. The coolant hung on there. I thought maybe it didn't bore that one all the way through, but it did, so we're good. Grab a bushing. I am not sure I'm loving the fit on that 1/8" ream hole. For some reason this titanium doesn't seem to want to ream very nicely. So I'm thinking I may have to modify that. I may end up having to cut those 1/8 holes in there and actually bore those, because I just don't like the feel of that reamed hole. Just a little too much clearance. So I don't think that's going to be a good fit. Probably going to have to modify that. But the rest of the op looks good, so we may have to do some tweak on the program there. Alright, let's get it flipped over. Let's see how we do on the next cycle. Cycle number 2, set up for the outside holes. So we've got that flipped over. We're going to come in there and probe on that hole right there and probe on the top side. We'll get that. And I need a couple different tools. I need tool number 20, 22, 24, 50, and 51. So I pretty much only have tools 22 and 24 in there. So I need to get 20, 50, and 51 loaded up. That's my center drill, my 256 tap drill size, and one of the other end mills. So let's get those loaded up in there. All right, now for this one, I got to get it down inside that hole so that I can probe it inside that hole. All right, there we go. So we're probed. So I started on Y and I've got it pretty close to center. I probed Y, probed X, and then once I know that I have it on center, then I have X on center, then I come back and I just re-probe Y to double check. So we should be good. Okay, so for this one, we are going to go through and counterbore the backside of these 3 in this one. Then we're going to cut our slots in there for that one. Then we'll drill a few holes around it and counterbore for the screws to go in there. See how our op runs. Well, there it is. That second operation is complete. I think we've got really nice looking finish down in those bores. Nice looking down in the counter bores. We're drilled through there. We're ready to tap. Let me check the fit on our piece in that 3/8 slot. If I check our fit, I think that comes in and out of there all right. That is going to be manageable. That could maybe be just a hair looser on that. We'll have to keep playing with that. But that's pretty good. So I think we've got a good looking part there. I think my biggest issue is these 1/8 holes. These ones for the assembly, not too big a deal, but that one in there, I think I've got to come up with a better way other than reaming it. So if I'm going to bore one of them, I may as well just bore all of them. So I think I will go adjust my program for that before I go make the other 9 pieces, but this will definitely be a functional, usable knife the way it is. So let's get this out of there. Let's get my piece of aluminum in there for the jig. We'll get that machined and we'll get this bolted down and run our contours.
This is just some 70-75 aluminum plate, 1/4 inch thick, that I'm using for these jig pieces to bolt my part to.
All right, pretty easy setup on this one. I just want to be on that dot anywhere close. Z, I need to be accurate. X and Y, just pretty much lined up anywhere close to that. And then for future setups of this, I will actually line up on the bore that we're going to make it. All right, pretty fast op as we're just going to cut the jig plate. So I got X, Y, and Z on that red dot right there. I'm going to leave X and Y exactly where they are when I bolt my other piece down. That'll have me centered up on that bore, and we'll just reprobe Z when we get the other piece in place. Only need 3 tools for this one. They are loaded in there. I need tools number 26, 27, and 35. Got those in. Should just be about a minute or 2 for this whole cycle. And there we go, we did make quick work of that piece. We made, minute and a half, made our jig. Let's get our bolts in there, let's get our piece bolted down, let's load up the tools that we need, and we're ready to go for this long cut for the contours. We should have a left handle slab here in about an hour.
I'm just bolting it onto the plate with the same hardware that I used to assemble the knife later.
All right, we need tools number 3, 4, 22, 27, and 29. We have tools number 3, 4, 22, 27, and 29 loaded in there. All right, we've got our program loaded in there for all these contours. And we've got our part loaded in there. I'm already probed on X and Y. I did reprobe Z. And just as a double check, it should be our thickness of our piece, 190 thou. It was within 6/10, so feels good. We've got a good setup. Time to run this contour program. This is the longest of the bunch, so let's see how we'll touch in with some video throughout as it's going, but about an hour and a half or so, I think, total to get through the whole deal. Then we'll have 2 sides. Here it's about to start. This is our first tool, this adaptive roughing here. Go around, give us a quick cut around that outside profile. And there it's made contact. And gonna work its way around there. Well, so far it's looking good. It cut fine. That's just the with the first tool, the 1/4 inch ball nose. We are 30 minutes in, but I went inside for about 5 minutes. Had to do something really quick, so I stopped it on a tool change, so get it kicked off and keep going. All right, well, so much for not breaking the cutter on the second time around. So we got in there with that 1/8 ball nose, and now that I see how deep it's taken a cut with that 1/8, I realize it did not rough out near deep enough with that 1/4 inch compared to what it roughed out when it did this on the right hand side. So for some reason that roughing pass with the 1/4 didn't remove near as much material, and that left way too much for that 1/8 for the amount of feed that I had going. So it made it around this first cut, and then it dug in there for that second one and didn't make it very far before it snapped. So I'm going to go back up and take a look at what's going on with the program for this 1/4 inch, get that one set correctly again, and then maybe rerun the rest of them if I need to. But I'll probably come down and re-rough that with the 1/4 inch. Obviously I'll reset my 1/8 tool here and we'll get this fired up again. But definitely found one error with my programming there compared to what I had going on the other side. So let me go do a little comparison, get it fixed. Alright, so a little troubleshooting and I figured out my problem. On that 1/4-inch ball-nosed end mill, I am using not an ER20 collet holder, but a 1/4-inch end mill holder with a set screw, and I do not have the flat spot on there, or I did not have. So it had actually spun a little bit and pushed in. That's why it didn't cut deep enough. So the program was good. The program is the same as it was before. So I went in there, I ground the little flat spot on that, I retightened that set screw. I am now going to reset the height on this 1/4-inch and on that 1/8-inch cutter. And I'm just going to start the program right from the beginning again and let it cut that 1/4-inch, get that the proper depth, and then that 1/8-inch cutter should go around and do fine. Let's get the height set, get her fired up again. Okay, I started the cycle over again, so if I'm right on that cutter being the wrong depth, then it should be taking a pretty decent cut once it gets in there. And that is what it's doing. So that was the issue. It just didn't cut what it was supposed to last time around. So we'll let that recut with the 1/4, and then we should be in good shape with the 1/8-inch once it gets in there. Good troubleshooting. Yeah, that 1/4-inch cutter is definitely taking off a lot more material this time than last time, so we should be good to go when that 1/8 one gets in there. Well, if it hadn't been 3 weeks, then I probably would have remembered what that looked like, because that is clearly a much different profile and depth of cut than we had before. Plus, that cutter must have moved before I even finished that last one, because now that ball nose end mill is actually breaking through, separates the piece, which is nice. This just barely hanging on in one little spot there, so now this piece just comes off. So now for the rest of the cutting, we don't have to break through that anymore. Should make it easier for profiling. And for that 1/8, there's that 1/8 ball nose cut right there, not near the material that it took out a minute ago. So I'm gonna go ahead and kick this off for the next tool, but I do think we've got a decent setup now. And I had a little bit of a step on that last right side. I'm wondering if that little bit of a step was because that 1/4-inch ball moved, and I'm thinking we're gonna get a smoother finish around the profile on this one too. So hey, just looking good all the way around. Let's get it going. So far we're 20 minutes in to re-rough that, so we should have about an hour left for it to completely finish. We are 42 minutes in, so that means we've got about 45 minutes left to go. It's like an hour and 27-minute total cycle time, and get in there through some of the coolant. But right now we're on that 1/8 ball nose still, working its way around and just cutting beautifully. Now that we've fixed the depth of cut on that 1/4-inch roughing, making all the difference. Everything's cutting just great. All right, curling up some nice big chips there as it's finishing up that profile. Looks good. All right, now we're in the racetrack mode. It is just making laps around, finishing that last contour. On a couple of these spots where it's right there on the edge, it still jumps up, but after a couple more passes of that, it's just going to be going straight around and around and around. So we seem to have a good program going here. We're an hour and 8 minutes in, and it should be an hour and 27 minutes altogether, so it should have about 20 minutes or so left. We should have a left side handle slab. All right, last pass with that big end mill to clean up the edge. And then we get to see what it's looking like in there. Just make sure we didn't have any flecks on those little ones. Make sure we get a nice clean cut around the profile. And we're done. There is a left side. And I think that I don't feel any kind of a notch, a step. So going from front side to back side, that profiled perfectly around there. Not feeling any sharp edge at all. So yeah, getting those tools in there secure, not having that 1/4-inch one move. I think we have a good program. Said it estimated at 1 hour 27 minutes, took an hour 34 total, but I think I paused in there somewhere, so that added a minute or two. But yeah, let's get this off of here. Let's put the two of them together and make sure we've got a match. Well, we've got our two halves. Very happy with how they came out. I think this left side we put together today came out even better. I think you can probably just about see where the light hits it. There's just that little bit of a lip on this one, a little bit of an edge, where this one is nice and smooth. This one, no step on the back side. This one, there was a little bit of a step on the back, so I think we've got better machining process going on with this left side, and that should now be a match to the right, so we should be in good shape. Now the big test, let's see how these fit together. So if we put, these are just going to be extra long, we'll just see how it goes from an assembly standpoint. Well, that shouldn't be tight right there. Let's see what happened. That came off of the jig. So I think maybe it's that little bushing. Yeah. Alright, I think this bushing's got a bit of a edge on it, so let's turn that around. That is just one tight bushing, so we'll skip that one, go back to this one. Alright, so we've got our bottom piece there. That is a fit. Alright, a little snug there. Let me go find my screwdriver. Alright, I think part of that was, it's just one of those was a little snug on the hole in general. There we go. So yes, we have a fit. We've got a knife handle together. Next step, we'll start working on that blade, and then we will put the blade in there and make sure it works. But looking at our mechanism through there, all these other holes are lining up perfect. So I believe we've got a good machining process. I'm going to go ahead and finish out that blade, get these holes tapped. Obviously we'll work on the hardware, get that done, but then we'll do a test fit and assembly. Once I've got the test fit and assembly done on this piece, then it will be time to go into production, crank out the other 9 knives that I've got ready to go on this one, get 10 done, and then see where we go from there. Either work on that cleaver design or knock out another 10 of these. But process is working. Very happy with how that turned out. Yeah, just a snug fit on that bushing in general, not an alignment issue. Okay, there we go. Well, YouTube, that's a wrap on another project here in the BladesIIB shop as we got this left side handle slab complete. Now we've got a matched pair. So we've got our left and our right mirror image of each other. And obviously they fit together very nice. Working on getting that first folder done. Good learning in this one. We got to learn a little bit in Fusion on how to copy and paste your cam machining operations. Actually copy and paste a whole setup. And remember, you can also set up templates in there. So if you've got a series of machining operations you find yourself consistently doing, make sure you're setting up a template. Bring your tools, bring everything in there, And as you saw today, those speeds and feeds, once you have a good recipe, then if you use that as a template, it really went through smooth on the other one. We did break one cutter, but good learning there as well. So was not an issue with our recipe. We had a good recipe going in, we had good speeds and feeds, and it was just an issue with a cutter had moved in the holder, didn't catch that, didn't realize it didn't rough enough out the first time, and then the next cutter came along and had to do something. So hey, that's just good machining learning on CNC and making sure that these machines do not just go on autopilot and run themselves. They still take some oversight and maintenance, but we were able to get in there, fix that, reset a couple of tool heights, get that going, and knock the piece out. So again, appreciate you watching. Next video, we'll be working on that blade. We'll get that blade profiled out, get that contoured. We'll get over on the grinder and we'll grind some bevels on there, get that ready for heat treat, put our file cuts on there. So it should be a good video. A lot of the blade work I'm still going to end up doing manually. There's some of it I could do on the CNC, but it's still a custom knife. I still plan to do some of that manually, so we'll talk through some of that in the next video. As always, appreciate you watching. For those of you subscribed to the channel, thank you so much. We've now over 1,000 subscribers. New to the channel, want to see more videos on knife making, machining, welding, just everything else we've got going on here in the BladesIIB shop, go ahead, hit that subscribe button. Until next time, I hope you're out in your own shop, working on some projects of your own, making some chips of your own. We'll be here in the BladesIIB shop working on that next video, and we look forward to seeing you soon. Until then, take care.